Good evening, this is Chrissy with another video tutorial for the Photography for Beginners editing group. There was a post in our group tonight about how to do Magbitten style editing. I've never looked at it before tonight, but I did try and come up with something that would emulate her approach. And when I posted it, I was asked to do a tutorial, so here's the tutorial to the best of my ability. Sorry for talking quiet. I'm trying not to wake a baby at the moment. So this is my really crappy raw image, and it was just a test shot. You can see I didn't even have her smiling or properly posing. And typically, until I start running out of room, I tend to just save everything. But I grabbed this image, and we'll see what we can do with it. So first thing I did was probably raise the exposure on this one. Magbitten's images tend to have lower contrast as well, so I just lower that. And the couple of images that I looked at tonight, the greens weren't quite so yellowy. They were a bit on the blue side. So I'll pull the greens down into the blue, maybe darken them a bit to get rid of some of the vibrance. And yeah, that was might have been about it. And at this point, I'm just trying to guess at what I did already. So the first thing I did was I went over everything with a brush that was negative clarity and negative sharpness. And just to try to emulate a little bit of that over-exaggerated blur that she tends to have in her images. So I'm just going to brush that in everywhere here. Got to be a little careful around my subject. I'll zoom in and get her. It's just easier to go over everything with a very large brush. There we go. And it's probably better to kind of build in your blur in layers so that you can sort of replicate a depth of field where things aren't always one set level of blurriness. So that looks about right. Maybe I'll just brighten that background up a little bit more. And that looks about it. Then I'll say new brush. And I only did clarity on one. The rest I left just with the sharpness. Go around the image like that. I did leave the area just around her feet in focus, I believe. And then I'll say new again. And do the exact same thing. And when I was finished with the blurring, I warmed the image up just a little bit. And cropped it in a little on the side too. That's probably everything I did. This was the image that I ended up with. Just trying to match it up here. Probably have to pull some of the vibrance out. similar to that. I hear baby fussing and I am running out of time. So what I did was when I finished all of those edits, I popped it on into Photoshop. This was what I ended up with the first time I did my Lightroom edits. So you can see the greens are really blue. I've got a bit of blur here on the sides, a lot of blur and that negative clarity in the background. So then what I did was I duplicated that layer. As you can see here, duplicated it and I added a Gaussian blur to it, just up here under filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I set that layer to screen. You can see it brightens it up. Probably mask it off of her a little bit there. You can see that does darken her up a little bit. So I think what I will do is lower the opacity on this just a little bit. I'm going to brighten up that background layer. And I think I'll add a photo filter. I believe that's what I did the first time. And this is just on the background layer. It's not on the one above it. And just orange gives it nice warm skin tones. It'll put back the skin tones that I kind of lost with all of that, reducing contrast and things like that. And that looks pretty close to what I ended up with. So I will merge my layers and save so that it will get sent back over to Photoshop or to Lightroom for me. And now that this is here, I did add some vignetting just to put a little bit of, I guess just to take a bit of that flat look out, but not a lot. Touch the edges with the vignette just so it shows up and bring it in. And then I simulated sort of light rays here by grabbing the gradient filter, and I'm just going to make this area here my light rays. So I'll come in like this and lower the exposure a little. I'll do the same on the other side. Maybe lower that one just a bit darker. Then I will take my radial filter, and where this bright spot already is, I am going to add a bit of a lighting effect just by raising the exposure and maybe making it a bit warmer. And then I will take an adjustment brush pretty much to match. So just a bit warmer, bit of exposure, and I'll just kind of brush it down like little light rays. And that in a nutshell is a really crappy tutorial on how to get the effects that I did. I really glossed over a lot of the steps. You know, there with the blurring of the background layers. I probably had about 10 layers of brushes, and I was constantly going in and brushing them off of her, zooming in so that I could get up really close. But I mean, in a nutshell, that's literally all this was just constant blurring, and then going into Photoshop so I could blur again, and then just putting in a little bit of depth with some vignetting, both with the vignette tool and the radial tool and the gradient tool. So hopefully you can hear anything that I've just said now. My baby's starting to cry and I've got to go. Thanks for watching the tutorial and have a great